Hi again, everyone. This is Stephanie Lapierre. I'm the founder and CEO of TealBook. We're just giving another few seconds for people to roll in. We're seeing a lot of attendees, which is great. This series has grown in followers since we started. This is the fourth week. If you have a chance, you can go back and listen to the first presentation that I gave on my observation in the industry. Week two, we were very fortunate to have Chris Sawchuk talking about his observation, sharing some of the context around COVID, as well as talking about what's required to enable a digital transformation. And last week we had Dr. Eloise Epstein from Kearney that was talking about the future state, her views on the future state, what's required to build a foundation so that you can have a more flexible, a more agile technology ecosystem in the future. Today, I'm so happy and pleased to have Walter Charles join us to present his views on what is required for digital transformation. And I had the pleasure to meet Walt, gosh, maybe 3 or 4 years ago now. And that was at the beginning of even my vision for TealBook and how we were building supplier data. And I have to say that Walt, I thought I had energy until I met Walt. He's got enormous amount of passion. He's got a big vision, and I was really fortunate for him to also believe in my vision very early on. That was a big game changer for us to have someone like Walt, who's so influential, who has gone through these massive digital transformation, who's driven results for every company, organization that he's been part of. And I also had the pleasure of interacting with a team that got so energized by having a leader that is incredibly passionate about building the technology required to scale and to create more value for the organization. So, you're going to be, for the next 30 minutes, well, we'll have an opportunity to do a Q&A at the end. So please type in your questions on the right-hand side. There is a box. I will compile the answers or the questions, and at the end, we'll go through some of the questions, and Walt will have a chance to answer your questions. And so no further ado, Walt, thank you so much for joining us. It's all yours.
Hey, Stephanie, thank you very much for that build-up. I'll try not to disappoint, but I'm delighted to have an opportunity to share what we have titled "The Future Is Now," and the subtitle of this is, how Industry 4.0 tools are going to transform industry's next largest business opportunity, and I think that opportunity is procurement. And I wanted to, again, the goal here is to provide more of a playbook and to give you a perspective. But what does the future look like? So imagine a future that is faster, better, and cheaper than the current environment you're dealing with, where Mavericks Bend, when your stakeholder calls you at the last minute and says they need something yesterday, and or avoids procurement altogether, where Mavericks Bend is pretty much either reduced entirely or obliterated and made actionable. So when people do stuff that impacts your ability to deliver good value for your business, you can actually engage, pivot it, and action it. And then we've got like this myriad of typical procurement challenges, which I've got a slide on a little later, which kind of talks to the numerous things that actually impact our ability as procurement to actually deliver value for our respective business. And so I'll share the click down on that in a little bit, but lots of procurement challenges that drive to better, not suboptimal outcomes for our business. Then we've got, what if you could get after strategically managed spend and make it twice as impactful? Why? Because we believe in this notion of hyper competition on every bid, every opportunity you've got for the company's business. And so imagine, and I call it 1,000 times more powerful. Imagine 100 times more suppliers on every bid, and 100 times more cost granularity, translating to about 1,000 times more powerful. And there are big data analytics solutions now that actually can allow you to do that without burning your people out, and make it twice as impactful, make the savings cadence the innovation cadence to your business twice as impactful for your business. Imagine if you can eliminate something we call Tailspin, right? Which is, every single procurement team on the planet. And I've had the privilege of speaking in a lot of places. I'd ask this question: how many of you procurement folks have enough resources to manage 100% of your spend? And nobody raises their hand, right? And so every single procurement team has limitations. Some of them are headcount based. And so imagine, and what we do is we then say we're going to work on certain population of stuff, and we're not going to work on consciously other populations of stuff. And that Tailspin contribution is roughly 20% of most people's spend profile. And so imagine 20% of the spend not being actioned. And what if you could eliminate the Tailspin problem by actioning that, automating that, and doing things in a much more robust way? What if you could find suppliers with AI, RPA, and ML algorithms, and leading to the democratization of supplier data for companies, so that folks in your business could find the right population of suppliers to get after whatever the need was, without needing to know the secret decoder password for the category manager that manages that particular supplier ecosystem, right? And so I think supplier data specifically, should be available to everyone that needs to see it, and consumable by everyone that needs to benefit from it. And Stephanie's vision for TealBook is to enable that in an intuitive kind of AI, ML, RPA informed way, which is a pretty compelling vision. And then what if you could, big data analytics, you can use big data analytics on everything in your bids to get after generating unprecedented competition. I believe that, with all of the disruption going on in industry, your job as a procurement group is to figure out who out there could potentially drive significant outcomes for your business, and be purposefully looking for the disruptors in all of the categories that you are buying in. And if you did that successfully, you would be able to bring those differentiated insights to drive value for the business. What if you could, unencumber your team with spreadsheet-based analytics and use big data analytics for a lot of the analytics work that you're doing, and take a complicated bid that would typically take 75 days and a lot of resources to kind of run through, and do it in less than 2. Big data analytics is the answer to kind of run at that. And I think there's significant opportunity to fundamentally change how we approach the analytics burden that we burden our teams with. And then what if you could actually use and leverage the insights and perspectives and innovations from the tens of thousands of suppliers that your business is likely working with, and find and unpack business model innovation, business process innovation, and new product innovation to the delight of your business. And if you did that, would that fundamentally and profoundly change what procurement's reason for being is for your business? And what if you could drive outcomes that actually delivered, 150 to 299% increases in your savings rates as a function of using the stuff above to get after delivering value for your business? And then lastly, I had this smart contracts framework. I believe contracts should be smart. I believe that there are AI approaches now in contracts that will allow you to very quickly assess gaps in contract language using AI algorithms. And that's also kind of a game-changing framework. And so this faster, better, cheaper mantra, this faster, better, cheaper promise of Industry 4.0 tools in the practice of procurement is there. And I'm here to tell you that, by the way, this is not procurement of the future. We've been doing this at a number of companies, and I'll share some of those case studies with you during the course of this. So here's the agenda. We just went through an imagineering of what the future could look like. Imagine if everybody actually did that. How transformational would that be for the function of procurement? How transformational would it be for our business? I wanted to share a little bit of my background. talk about the procurement challenges, give you some context for what that stuff looks like. Share with you the best things I've read as a CPO. I'm a pretty voracious reader, so I try to read a lot. And I've taken the best of some of the stuff that I've read to give you news you could use to kind of hopefully drive your business forward. I'll share a big picture slide on strategy, approaches to mitigate some of the challenges that existed for procurement, diagnosing process tools and capability challenges. I'll provide some real world evidence and then give you some do's and don'ts. All right, so my background. If you look on the far left-hand side, I've been a chief procurement officer for a bunch of companies. I've been a CPO at Cordis, a medical devices company for Johnson & Johnson. I was at J&J for 8 years. I also had the privilege of leading J&J's consumer supply chain business. And so I did med devices, pharma, because the Cordis business was more of a combination med device with a pharmaceutical product on it. And then I had stints as the CPO of Kraft Foods. You might know them for having the wonderful neon orange mac and cheese that you're probably devouring in your pantries these days. Kellogg's, you're probably consuming a lot of cornflakes and various breakfast cereals. Biogen, less known, but they're a biotech, again, Fortune 500 company. And then Allergan, notably known for Botox. And so those are kind of roles where I've had the privilege of leading as CPO, Chief Procurement Officer. Before that, I was an engineer and had various roles at companies like Merck and Bristol Myers Squibb and Applied Water Management that got me through the balance of my career. Educationally, I've got a couple of engineering degrees, a bachelor's and master's in engineering. I went to the United States Merchant Marine Academy, so I'm a naval officer. And I also have an MBA from Columbia University. And so I tend to think in very pragmatic terms, as engineers are trained to do, but with a meaningful focus on what's going to drive the business forward. So that's the MBA framework from Columbia. I've had the privilege of speaking at a bunch of places. So I've been either a speaker or a chair at Procurement Leaders World Congress, at the Americas Congress for Procurement Leaders, the North American Supply Chain Executive Summit in 2017, 2018, and 2019. The last 2 years, I was actually the chair of that distinguished body of events. Then ProcureCon Indirect, ProcureCon Asia. So I was out in Singapore last year. ISM, Institute for Supply Management, Exec-In Chair. So just a number of I think, marquee industry-based events where I've been asked to talk mostly about digital disruption and how digital transformation was going to fundamentally transform the practice of our business. During the last 5 or 6 years, I've also accumulated a following of the maximum of 30,000 that LinkedIn allows. So I'm privileged to have 30,000 people who listen every once in a while to my posts, and that's kind of my background. So I think, given the CPO stuff, I have a perspective across multiple sectors that I know can benefit the companies that are on this, that are listening on this event. All right, so following challenges that may apply to procurement. So the first one is Mavericks Bend. Now I'm going to go through a click down on Mavericks Bend here shortly, but Mavericks Bend is what happens when the process doesn't work the way you need it to work. You get last minute notification, you don't see the event at all, so procurement is bypassed. And therefore, no matter what tool you bought, you'll never actually deliver value from it. And so, and this is more of a, do I have the right behavioral process lens to fix the Maverick problem? And do I have the right governance framework at the business to fix it? But Mavericks Bend is a meaningful challenge. And now I'm telling you, you don't have to tolerate it anymore. There are tools and processes out there that can help fix the Mavericks Bend problem and put it to bed in your business. No procurement involvement. In some cases, Mavericks Bend turns into, well, people just bypass procurement altogether. And so you don't put a robust process around a lot of money, and you end up missing a lot of value creation. Last minute notification, wrong tools, wrong application, policy issues, non-compliance reporting, savings are reinvested. So you got some stakeholder behavioral issues you got to run at. Buyer influencing skills are limited. You're putting the wrong competition or limited competition on deals. Many of us actually use 3 bids and a buy, which is often written in our policies. I don't know any instance where 3 bids define the full panoply of suppliers that should be on a bid. And so I think it's a practice that we need to sunset as a function. Poor decision making, poor negotiation skills, non-compliance, enforcement, and wrong analytics. So these are things that if these things go wrong in your deal, you're not going to get the right types of outcomes on your deal. And these challenges, quite frankly, can be severely reduced with new tools, processes, and capability changes now that didn't exist when I started, when Methuselah taught me procurement a couple of decades ago. So so that's the landscape. And many of you guys probably are feeling some of these challenges now. I'm here to tell you that you don't have to accept that as your go forward any longer. You just need to listen and then follow the instructions I give you at the back end. All right, so here's some of the best things I've ever read from guys like Hackett, Deloitte, and Pierpont Holdings. So first, Deloitte did this survey of about 500 CPOs and $5.5 trillion worth of spend on an annual basis, and representing 39 countries. And in this, they unpacked top priorities for procurement and some of the belief systems for procurement. On the priority side, we still focus, 78% of us focused on cost reduction, 58% still have new product, new market development opportunities or challenges within our business that we have to focus on. And then, this was 2018 data, but I'm sure in 2020, it's going to be managing risk. Managing risk will take a much more higher impact framework going forward because of the COVID-19 challenges. And then on the belief side, they asked these 500 CPOs, how many of your current team have the skills to deliver against the strategies that you put forward? And 51% said, no, I don't think my team does. And then the second one is digital procurement strategy can deliver goals. And I'm here to tell you, on the belief side, we CPOs have some belief challenges, and I'll dispute both of these. One, I believe in the power of procurement professionals. I believe that if you take them through a different journey, you could actually, the capability stuff can be taught. You don't need a brain transplant for your entire leadership team or your entire procurement team to get after delivering digitally enhanced outcomes. You just need a different way to approach it. And then secondly, on the digital side, I believe 97% of us could leverage digital to enhance our goals, starting with the 78% that have a cost reduction and a cost reduction charter or target for their business. So this was, cool data. By the way, it's available online at www.deloitte.com. And I would encourage everyone to read it. There's a lot of rich substantive data in there. So check it out because it's pretty cool. And then Mavericks Bend. So Hackett actually studied in 2019 Mavericks Bend and what are some of the key causes of Mavericks Bend. And by the way, their stuff is online as well. And so some of the things that drive Mavericks Bend is no self-service or guided buying tools, 75% of the cases. Non-compliant mentality, so you've got stakeholders that just don't necessarily care. Resistance to behavioral change despite official policies and procedures, 69%. Processes are complex or require training to follow, 58%. And then 33% said there's a lack of high-touch assistance when needed. And so, imagine being able to guide folks. And by the way, all these things, these challenges around Mavericks Bend, many of them can be addressed by tools and new processes that are out there that I think are game-changing. And if you could fix the front end of your process, which is being able to see everything with enough time to compete it, you can actually drive a lot more robust outcomes. And then the third player is a new entrant called Pierpont Holdings. And Pierpont Holdings said, answered the question, why is it that when I drop a tool off at a customer that I can't automatically get all of the value that tool promised. And it's because, quite frankly, it's not just a tool in many cases. You got process and capability challenges that either enhance your ability to get after the outcome you want or degrade it. And they said, so what if I could unpack the process, tools, and capabilities in such a way that I could make the outcomes more reproducible, irrespective of the companies that I was dropping the tool off at, or the new process off at, or doing the trainings around capability off at. And so this is brand new thinking that says that there are interdependencies around process tools that have to be factored to get after driving value from these Industry 4.0 tools. And they built an entire practice and a set of proprietary approaches and a tool to kind of drive value here to get after faster, better, cheaper, the cheaper mantra for the broader business, which is wicked cool. And then they said, well, what if we kind of zoomed out to the broader globe, but focusing on the U.S. first? How impactful, if procurement could run at these problems, how impactful could it be? And kind of here's a Pierpont Holdings that were kind enough to give me a bootleg of this. So I'm using this for this particular presentation. And so they said, what if I could focus on 5 areas? The first area is around the strategically managed spend that all the procurement teams have just in the U.S. The Tailspin that the folks have in the U.S. that's kind of inferred, the tools that we're using, the processes that we had, and the capability challenges that we had. And what if I could develop a from-to for what the future would need to look like for this? So, and let me give you some of the end game here. So we roughly manage cumulatively in all of the U.S. about $9 trillion just in the U.S. of spend. And if you take the largest companies and you started to work your way down the spend threshold, it doesn't take a lot of companies. I've had the privilege of talking in front of audience of about 850 people that had $6 trillion worth of buyers in a single room, in a single meeting at the Procurement World Congress for procurement leaders. And so very few people, for the first time in the history of business, are controlling massive amounts of spend. And we're doing it in a suboptimal way because we're not leveraging these new tools. But we said if we could actually, do the bids on the strategically managed side as they were intended. So if we could see it early enough to compete it, if we compete it robustly, powering it up by 1,000, by having 100 times more suppliers and 100 times more cost attributes, using big data analytics to kind of churn out better solutions to the award scenarios that I was considering, how much incremental could I get after? And they theorized that somewhere between 3 and 5% incrementally could be delivered on the stuff that you're currently managing by doing procurement as it was intended and leveraging these next generation tools and approaches to get after it, which is, I think, game changing, right? So then they said on the Tailspin side, most of us write off 20% of our spend because we simply don't have the manpower, the people power to get after it, or we outsource it to a third party that may be just using 3 bids and a buy as their de facto busted approach to kind of source it. Now, it's better than doing nothing, which is also a choice that people make. Some people choose to do nothing because they don't have the resources to do it. But if you manage your Tailspin, I'm here to tell you that guys like Ardent Partners tells you can deliver about 12% incremental if you can put that through a robust sourcing process. So put your Tailspin through a robust sourcing process, and you can fundamentally deliver 12%. That's the Ardent Partners study. I have in real world experience at Biogen, for example, we were able to save 20% on everything we touched because we had a much more robust sourcing framework. But this is incremental savings that you typically would not have seen, which can be game changing. Now, the size of Tailspin at Kellogg's, which is a $10 billion top line, or $10 billion spend per year, $2 billion was in my Tailspin. $2 billion with a B. stuff that we had consciously made the choice not to action. I believe that's a busted framework. And so that's what I think we need to pivot from. And then the third one is around Mavericks Bend. What if you could actually see all the stuff you should be working on with enough time to actually compete it? And what our friends at Hackett said, and they did this by category, they said there's probably 5 to 16% savings rate, depending on the category, that you could deliver simply by introducing the right types of procurement-led competition in your bids, and then doing a much more robust data analytics framework on it, which can be game-changing, right? So those 3 buckets, we believe, can drive massive amounts of incremental lift. And let's give you the from-to framework here. So today, we typically manage 20% of our suppliers, and means that we don't effectively manage 80% of our spend. I think we need to source or automate or all of those suppliers, because quite frankly, you need to manage much more than what you're currently managing. And if you had a tool that gave all of a sudden your team the bandwidth to manage the 60% they're currently managed, 80% they're currently managing, plus the 20% without burning them out, wouldn't that be game changing for your business? We also don't manage 80% of our suppliers from a risk perspective. I think you got to manage what matters there, and we take a fundamentally different approach to managing risk that's P&L based. So, what are the bill of material items that drive most of my sales, and how do I make sure I protect those? And you'll have a couple of big suppliers, and the vast majority of them will be small suppliers that provide packaging materials or some small part for that particular bill of material for that product. And oh crap, if you're not managing those small suppliers for those big products, you can actually impact materially your business, which some people unfortunately are probably experiencing as a function of the COVID-19 challenges. And so that's the from to for the strategically managed stuff. On the from to from the tools perspective, I think we should throw spreadsheets away. They were invented in the 70s. They need to be retired, and we should take spreadsheet analytics out of the bid stuff and go to big data analytics for everything that we source. And if we did that, you'd be able to do a lot more with a lot more robustness, manage many more suppliers, and unpack a lot more of your costs and deliver significant value for your business. I think you should blow up Google searches and go to AI enhanced finding solutions that will fundamentally change how quickly you can find a relevant list of suppliers to compete for the business that you've got for your business, purposefully looking for innovators, disruptors in each of the categories that you're sourcing. And I believe there's an opportunity to get after fixing the limited process visibility. And I talk it in I believe that there's buyer to buyer variability that you've got to manage through the source to contract process. And if you don't know where the strengths and weaknesses are of your team, you don't know how it's going to present challenges for you when you go to execute a deal. And so wouldn't it be great if you had a tool that would help you understand where folks were gapped, so you can intervene with enough time to help close those gaps on real deals and drive real impact for your business. And then lastly, you got to fix the Mavericks Bend. This Mavericks Bend thing is massive, right? And every single company that I've worked for has had a massive Mavericks Bend challenge. And I believe, by the way, it's ubiquitous in our industry, but it's fixable now with the right tools and ecosystem, and you can actually help deliver incremental value there. And the last note that I'll make is, at every single company that you saw where I had the opportunity to transform, that's Kellogg's, Kraft, Biogen, Allergan, 4 Fortune companies, I was able to use the exact same players. So the category manager, strategic thinking, those folks were leveraged. And not only did they deliver materially more on the back end, but all I had to do was change the process and train them differently and give them a new set of capabilities. And we were able to deliver significantly bigger outcomes with the technology ecosystem. So this particular slide from Pierpont Holdings talks about the interdependency to those 3 things, but it also shares kind of the from to the vision for what the journey should look like. And then the other insight that's fascinating is that in procurement, we tend to fix everything by buying something. But in many cases, we'll buy a tool when you need something different. And so the issue here is I listed on the left-hand side the things that kind of can go wrong, those challenges, procurement challenges. And I said, okay, what do you need to fix those? Do you need a process, a tool, or capability? Just a singular lever there? Do you need a couple of things, a process and capability, or a tools and a capability, or a process and tools framework, any two? Or do you need all three kind of working in concert to deliver value? And you can see the majority of the things required a much more robust solution than just a singular, I just need to buy a tool for that, right? You had to come up with a much more comprehensive framework than the one that's out there. And by the way, and there are lots of people buying tools when they got a process or capabilities problem. That's a busted framework, right? You've got to make sure you are purposefully buying the thing you need to fix the problem you've got. And that's a failure mode that many of us in procurement make when we hear a pitch from players. So here's some real world evidence. At Kellogg's, first 100 and the challenge was to deliver a 150% increase over 3 years. We delivered 190% increase in year one in savings. 190. Now imagine at Kellogg's, you're buying $10 billion a year worth of stuff. You got 300 people globally. You've got a $2 billion tailspin problem. How do you deliver a lot more? Well, you got to source the strategically managed stuff more robustly. The 80% that you were strategically managed, you got to do that with an eye for disruptors, an eye for innovation, and you got to use a lot more suppliers, drive competition on every single bid, and then you need it. So we used big data analytics. We used an early engagement framework that fundamentally changed the game. First 113 days, 120 days, we delivered $113 million, just to give you a sense for the magnitude of the lift. It's freaking massive. And I had the privilege of being the CPO there. It was my first real deal CPO job where I was the number one guy. Next year we delivered 180% with about $600 million less spend coming due. So we did yeoman's work, and that journey continues with Shelley, who succeeded me at Kellogg's, and they continue to deliver significant value for the business. At Kraft, it took me 5 months to convince my CFO to bolt on this new process, but in the remaining 7 months of the year, we delivered 150% improvement in value creation at Kraft, and then Kraft got bought by Heinz, so we couldn't do a repeat there. And I went to Biogen. At Biogen, I was the first CPO in Biogen. We delivered a 250% increase by bolting on a new set of tools and processes, largely leveraging the same people ecosystem at all three of these companies. And at Allergan, I'm pleased to report that number has ballooned to almost 300%, 299% increase in savings rates, basis my day one targets when I joined, in 1 year, one full year. It's a game-changing set of outcomes. So this is testament on billions of dollars of scale that using big data analytics, Industry 4.0 tools, new supplier discovery engines, and getting after a training, processes, and a capabilities ecosystem framework, you can actually deliver significant value with many of the folks you already have. All right, so what do I suggest you do? So at the end of this year, I actually set myself up, end of last year, to basically, instead of keeping these data cloistered for my own benefit and rinsing and repeating at every company that I went to, I figured I would try to share how to do exactly that with over 400 companies. So this is my 400 company challenge. While most people are trying to write off cheesecake, my goal was, I figured if I could change 400 companies and get them on their digital journey, I could help them get after them. I think on this call, there's likely people that have heard something different than the current practice and would like to learn more. Here's the don'ts. Don'ts: Don't buy a tool when you got a process problem. Don't buy a high-priced process consultant when you have a tool problem. And don't buy a high-priced capability trainer when you got a tool or a process problem. You need a much more comprehensive solve. And I believe Pierpont Holdings has the right solve for that. It's a purpose-built boutique consulting firm that actually can help you fix that. I want you, and this is my personal cell phone number. If you can hear my voice and you believe that your company could benefit from this, I want you to join my 400 company challenge and just text tools to 786-566-1766. That's my personal cell phone number. I will get you in touch with the people that will help you fix the challenges that you've got so you can deliver more impact for the business. That's my commitment to you and to the industry. Below that is my personal email account. It's waltcharlesii at gmail.com. And so please reach out to me on my email and say, look, I'd like to join the 400 company challenge. And I have a term of endearment for the challenges that I talked about in one of the earlier slides, and I call it busted. When things aren't working optimally, it's busted. If some of the things that are busted for your business, like they were for mine, I would encourage you to actually do something about it. You don't have to sit silently and accept that as your as your circumstance. You can fix it. I will show you how. And then lastly, if you know of someone who might be able to benefit, because all of us have worked at other companies, who might be able to benefit from this, I want you to liberally share this webinar address to whomever you think could benefit from it, because I believe if we got 400 companies in the mix, we will change the industry, and procurement will cease being kind of a relegated, non-overly strategic back office partner and take the mantle that we deserve as a group that manages $9 trillion, the second most powerful group in any company, in my view, right after sales, at driving value for the business. And I'm willing to help you do it. Please text, and I see some texts rolling in. 78 tools to 786-566-1766. I will follow up with you and help you get after this. And I think, Stephanie, I'm kind of ready for any Q&A.
Thanks, Walt. So jam-packed with the toolkit to go after some results, and that's what you're showing over and over again, that you've been able to drive this. So thank you so much, Walt. The purpose of the series have been really to build up on helping the community build a use case for investing and thinking about data. And as you go through your presentation, you do allude a lot to going after big data analytics. It'd be great if you could potentially unpack this for us a little bit more.
Yeah, so on the big data side, so how do you approach it? So the question was, what if you could include 1,600 suppliers, if that's the ecosystem that's out there, on a bid, on every bid that you could? And what if you could also try to get cost granularity, go down for every SKU, kind of unpack about, 100 various drivers that actually drive the price for that SKU, right? Whether it's labor, inputs, packaging, electricity, utilities, whatever, the things that are actually driving the cost, the price that the supplier is extending you. What if you could actually get after that granularity? Well, if you're using Excel today or any type of spreadsheet, you can't, right? Because the burden that you would be taxing yourself with trying to manage the pivot tables is just too burdensome, and so that we basically dummy everything down in procurement to keep it simple. So we assume that only three or four things are driving my price. We probably are assuming badly because we don't really have data. And we're assuming that the three players that we're including in the bid on a regular basis are the best of the best in everything that we might ask them to do, which I will tell you, in my experience, 30 years, one supplier can't possibly be world-class good in everything that you might want to give to them, period. Hard stop. And so what if you were going to take, so if you're going to do that, imagine, negotiating 1,600 suppliers, with 1,600 suppliers, and being able to put it on a big data analytics engine, and being able to do the analytics in like seconds, to get to what the award scenario should be in seconds instead of months of a couple of months of pivot table hell. That's kind of the discrete difference between big data analytics, where the power is now in your index finger, hitting the return key with that new platform, and it will give you insights that you could not have gotten using Excel, and innovations that you could not have unpacked using Excel. It is a game changer in the use of procurement, and I believe every single bid, when you've got a lot of suppliers, a lot of cost attributes, looks like a big data analytics problem. And what I've talked about at a couple of other industry events is a labels bid that I did for Kraft Foods. It's a real world labels event, where we had 900 suppliers, 100 cost elements per SKU, 5,100 SKUs. That's 450 million data elements in it. How do you possibly come up with an award construct in Excel in a reasonable amount of time, with 450 million data permutations associated with it? You can't do it with spreadsheet analytics. We actually did it in 2 days, and came up with an award scenario for all the labels, about 5.1 billion labels, for Kraft in a year, in 2 days, in a cubicle with a analyst, spiky-haired kid named Matt, and a really sharp guy who led the category, named Russ, in a cubicle right outside of my office. And they sat there for 2 days, and they did a bunch of permutations and found the right award scenario across the 5,100 SKUs and the 900 suppliers and the 15 plants that they were getting after. And they could not have done it. They said, well, it would have taken 2.5 months just to do 1/10 of the volume. And we did it all in one throw and got to an award scenario in 2 days. So that's what's doable now. And those names are top of mind now, because I actually spoke with Russ recently. He's now at another company. But I believe that his new company could also benefit from that type of big data analytics framework. And I believe virtually every player on this call could also benefit from this framework as well.
Thanks, Walt. Another question came in. So I'm trying to connect Walt's perspective to last week's webinar with Dr. Epstein, who spoke to have a procurement data lake and then plug procurement specific microservices like APIs into a PDL. Does Walt have a similar setup in mind?
Well, so by the way, my setup typically is I focus on where the most value is created. So I'm not trying to solve everybody's problem around data. I'm trying to solve for a singular use case around source to contract. And it basically says, if I could give my negotiator the best possible data optics on the bid he or she was working on, such that they would be able to distill those data into negotiating messages that will give us better outcomes, into better insights, and into greater innovation. That's the singular use case, the singular lane that I'm trying to get after. Now, we have in my framework said, what are all the things I would need to string together to make source to contract, which I believe is the most powerful, second most powerful functional play in all of business, at about 70% of revenues for most businesses on average. It's massive. I believe that is the lane that we need to focus on, source to contract. There are a myriad of other challenges. A lot of players play in the procure to pay space. They say it's source to contract, but it's really just procure to pay. If they're not involved in the contract negotiation, they just take the contracts and then actually process the transactions or invoices. That's a procure to play. I'm looking at source to contract. And I believe if you focus on source to contract, which is where most of the value is either created or lost, That's those data that are important to source to contract are the ones that I focus on. And yes, I've got a platform framework that I use to actually an enterprise procurement platform that is, I think, a game changer at helping provide visibility around the source to contract lenses so that you can figure out what challenges you're seeing with enough time to mitigate them and then drive a lot more value for your business.
Thank you, Walt. Just maybe last questions. We're already running a couple of minutes behind, but I do think it's timely to think about times like COVID reinforce the value of procurement beyond cost reduction. And do you see this shifting towards continuity or agility in the near future, and how does data play into that plan?
Yeah, I actually think it's an and story. You've got to be ambidextrous here, procurement folks, right? You've got to not only deliver the core things that are out there, and I think in this case, Gartner or Hackett, actually no, Deloitte had it right. 78% of us have to focus on savings. There's a 53% around risk mitigation. Today is a meaningfully more risky place, and so probably if you did that survey today, probably 80% of the stuff, and it won't be the classical stuff like I need raw material stuff showing up. It's, do I have enough PPE to keep my plants running? Right, so you've got a different focus on what risk looks like now, basis what's going on outside of our plants. And so my sense is that risk, you have to do both savings and risk mitigation. You have to make sure you figure out how to grow and expand new markets. It's more of an and story, not a either or story. And effective procurement teams are going to have to figure out how to do, kind of those three main pillars really well, with varying degrees of adroitness, I guess, because it's going to be meaningfully challenging otherwise.
And are there things specifically at Allergan that you guys have done in the last 3 weeks to address COVID, and how does that impact you?
Yeah, so interestingly, I just sent out something to my team that there was a cohort of, I don't know, 40, 50, 60 CPOs that got on the line for another consulting company, and we ran a survey. So what are we trying to do? One, we're trying to make sure we are protecting our employees. So our number one, probably our number one thing is to make sure that our employees come in and leave in the same relative case that they came into the office, right? Not too different from our normal EH&S charter, but with a fundamentally different twist to try to fix and mitigate challenges that might exist with this unseeable, hard to test kind of COVID journey. So keep our employees safe. Secondly, then it's making sure we're dialing in, for the stuff that is non-essential, make sure we actually only bias our manufacturing assets, focus all of our attention on the stuff that's that's essential, right, for folks to get after. Elective surgeries that are listed in some of the things that we do. We've fundamentally focused to the things that I think people will have to actually continue to do during this crisis, and so that's been a fundamental pivot. And then it's P&L protection, right? It's how do we work with our partners? So imagine having a strategic conversation with your suppliers, and it's now trying to figure out, hey guys, are you okay financially? Are you going to be able to weather this? Are there things we can do, like potentially a moratorium on our payment terms, for example, and get you the money faster, so that if there's a cash burden, can we be a strategic partner and help you weather through this? And so those are the types of things that we're seeing procurement teams kind of pivot to, but it's protect your employees, protect the things that folks still have to do that are non-voluntary, non-discretionary, and then grow the rest in a safe and compliant way, given the social distancing frameworks that exist in the broader business and the broader environment. So So those are some of the things. COVID, I think, I called it a COVID tsunami in a thing earlier today. The COVID is going to fundamentally reshape how procurement is thought of. When you've got the President of the United States talking about we got to procure ventilators and procure and procure, PPE, it's top of mind for a lot of folks. But I think once all of the financial implications are felt with COVID, the consequential tsunami that's going to come with challenges in the supply base, and how we're going to be tasked to mitigate them will test us in the coming months. And what I wanted to do is at least provide some tools, some antidote to so that you could fix some of the stuff that's been busted and plaguing you for the last couple of decades with a new way to think about it, and then pivot to a much broader framework later.
Well, thank you so much, Walt. Your passion is always very contagious, and so I hope that everyone got a lot of benefit out of hearing your talk today and got energized. We're all working from home and probably feel somewhat isolated. So thanks again for joining us. There's a lot more questions, so we will compile the questions and then revert them back to you, Walt, so we can answer them for the audience. And also for everyone, all of the webinars from the first week that we started on March 25th are on YouTube. And so you can go back, hear mine, Chris Sawchuk's, and Dr. Eloise Epstein, and then Walt's talk will also be posted on the YouTube channel, I think at the early next week. So thanks again, everyone, for taking the time out of your day and joining us, and stay safe. Thanks again, Walt.
Thanks, guys. Appreciate the opportunity.